Welcome back to another episode of the Lifestyle School Podcast. I am your host, Hope Plack, and today we're going to talk about a book that has sold over 40 million copies. It has influenced leaders all over the world. It's influenced me a lot, and somehow has almost nothing to do with nutrition or metabolic health, at least on the surface. And that book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Now, if you've never read the book, don't worry. This isn't going to be a book report. We're not going back to high school. This is going to be a conversation about why I believe the principles in this book are some of the most important lessons you can learn if your goal is to lose weight, improve your metabolic health, and build a lifestyle you can actually sustain. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? What is the point of doing a quote unquote diet if you can't sustain the changes that you're making for, 1, 5, 10, 20 years from now to optimize your health? So before we get into today's episode, though, I want to give you guys a little personal update. But first, I want to say sorry for the audio last week on episode 82. I don't know what happened. I don't think my microphone was actually working. I think it was using the microphone maybe from my headphones. I don't know, or just like straight up on my computer. Something happened, guys. The audio was awful. So I apologize. I want to make this like the most wonderful experience ever for you. But I am a novice. 83 episodes into this, I'm still a novice. New system. I have got a new setup here and I am learning. So bear with me as we, do it imperfectly, right? Because if we always waited to be like a master at something or perfect at something to do it, we'd never do anything. And I know I would never do anything. So we're just going to do this together imperfectly. And thank you for having grace for me and showing up. So if you guys aren't following me over on Instagram, you wouldn't have heard, but this last weekend, I turned into a little bit of a raccoon on Saturday. And you're like, Hope, what do you mean by that? Well, I have on this podcast talked about my relationship with food in the past and how I have kind of felt like a bit of a trash panda or a human garbage disposal, meaning that there have just been times or days in my life where I feel like I need to, or I just can consume any and all food around me. And I don't lose all abandon. Is that the right way to say it? I just essentially start scavenging around my house, putting every type of salty, crunchy, sweet, processed food that I can get my hands on, and I eat it until I feel sick. And this is disordered eating. It's something I've been working on for many, many years. And I would say I am light years ahead of where I used to be. But this last Saturday, I turned into a raccoon. And I was scavenging around my house. I ate so much food. I polished off like 3 different chocolate bars. I finished more than 1 bag of chips that was in our house. And there was like stuff in our house that's not normally in our house too, which isn't always setting myself up for success. But I would say generally recently, this stuff hasn't bothered me. It's not like this huge temptation to have it in the house. But Saturday, I lost control. And one thing that I thought was really cool about the experience was that I was able to tell both my sister and my husband about it. And they were like, well, why do you think you did that? And it was like, I don't know. I honestly didn't know why I did it. I couldn't tell them. And also what I thought was cool is I was able to share that I did that and not feel like this overwhelming embarrassment and shame. Like I was a little embarrassed, but I know these people love me. And yeah, maybe they judged me a little bit, but I needed to be judged maybe a little bit in that moment. But I thought it was such a big step for me to be able to not like hide in shame, but just like bring it into the light. The light is the best disinfectant. And also just to dialogue with them about it, because I can't tell you how much shame I have carried about this type of behavior. And while I was actually talking to my husband about it on our evening walk, he was like, I'm actually surprised you told me about this, because in the past, like I will just notice things go missing, like food, and I won't say anything, but I definitely notice. And It's so real. But as I was going to bed, I was still like kind of thinking about like, why did this happen? I felt awful. It made me feel so sick. And I was like, so that happened on Saturday. By Monday, I was still feeling unwell from that. And he was, So I was, laying in bed thinking about like, why did I do this? And then it just hit me. I just kind of started to like rehash what is going on in life. And I do have this thing about, I think sometimes disconnecting emotionally from my current reality if like things are getting hard or I'm getting frustrated. Another thing I'm working on in my own personal journey to just become the healthiest version of myself, because all of these things play into each other. And I realized that all of these things that I know I have like identified to be triggers for myself for binge eating over the years converged on one day, which was Saturday. My husband was working 7 days straight, and he works very long hours most days. And so I had essentially been single parenting for 6 days straight. And that's a lot with 4 kids. I was feeling burnt out on that level of things. My daughter was kind of under the weather, extra whiny, weepy. And if you have a daughter who's done this or a son, just like after so much, it's like the whining, it's like nails on a chalkboard. It can feel rough. Definitely a trigger for me. And then, let's see here. I was behind on sleep. Last week I was trying to get back, kind of caught up with sleep all week. I did not do the best job. Part of it is because my husband was working late and was trying to, go on our nightly walk, just so we could see each other for, 30 minutes of the day. And that just, meant I wasn't getting to bed at 9 versus 9:30. And then I was 6 days out from getting my period. So my hormones were not working in my favor. So all of these things converged on one day, and it was like, no wonder. No wonder I just turned into a crazy person and lost all control and ate everything in my house. And so I share this story because as I've worked with clients over the years, I hear these stories, and I also hear the shame that people carry from, this type of behavior. And I want you to know there's nothing new under the sun. You're not you doing this is not unique or special. And so many people do it. So many people struggle with it. And if we can remove the guilt and shame from these poor habits and these poor eating behaviors, and if we can approach ourselves with grace and love and kindness and then curiosity, we can actually start to identify, what is happening, identify our triggers, which is the first step because you can't change something you don't know. And from there, we can start to do a better job. I was telling my husband, the more I reflect on this, I was like, if I know you're going to be working 7 days in a row, by day 4 or 5, I need to be doing proactive things so that I don't get to this place again. Because it's, that's just like that can be easily for me the straw that breaks the camel's back. And so the more we're aware of things, the more we can be proactive and then divert these behaviors to something more productive and in line with our health goals. So I share that because I want to be humble. And also, I want you to know I don't have it all figured out. I'm still working on myself, and I don't think I'm ever going to be done working on myself, right? There's no end in this journey of optimizing our health, becoming our healthiest selves. It's just, it's such a layered thing. And sometimes you got to go back and refine tune stuff too, because life happens. So I hope that encourages you. I weighed myself this morning. I am 36 hours into a fast, and my weight is up from what it was on Friday after my binge on Saturday. And that's fine. I'm about, I think 22 from my lowest weigh-in, about 22 pounds down. I think I'm on week 13, and yeah, I'm not at all surprised. And so it's not bothering me. I'm just going to keep showing up this week, doing what I know works. I'm going to work the plan, and the plan's going to work for me. And my goal is by November-ish time to be at my goal weight. So if I just keep forging on, trying to avoid, a ton of incidences of turning into raccoon, it's going to probably help happen faster than later. Also, funny story, Saturday night, I was on my walk and I was walking in the dark, and I happened upon a family of 5 raccoons in the middle of the road. I've never seen 5 raccoons like that. I've seen maybe like 1 raccoon before out on a walk, and I saw 5 together, and I was like, it's a sign. They were like, Hope, come join us. It's time. Okay. With that, guys, I'm going to stop just riffing and give you our, what's it called? Disclaimer for the episode. So before we get into it, quick reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making major changes to your diet, fasting routine, supplements, or exercise program. And as always, if you enjoy this episode, if you've enjoyed our past episodes, it would mean the world to me if you would share it with a friend, leave a review, subscribe to the podcast, and follow me over on Instagram and or Facebook. The handle over there is Hope Plaque Coaching. That's just a great way to get the word out about this podcast so other people can enjoy these conversations. And then if you want to support the show in like a monetary way, which, it does cost money to do this. I try to do it on the cheap, guys, but it does cost money to produce a podcast, to do all of this, to try to provide these free resources to you. If you are already buying supplements, or maybe if you're thinking like, I want to take a couple things to support my health, I do have a supplement store over on my website, www.hopeplaquecoaching.com. Head over there, top right corner, you'll see store, click it. If you want to create an account within the store, you'll need the code 104567. And all of the supplements there are what I have used like my whole life, pretty much. And it's what my kids take. It's what I recommend to my clients. They're all high quality, third-party tested supplements for quality and purity. Unfortunately, high quality supplements that are tested by third parties because they're not regulated by the FDA is not something that you are guaranteed when you're buying supplements from the grocery store or the health food store or Amazon. Amazon is actually the worst place to buy supplements. Guys, do not buy supplements on Amazon. But I digress. If you want to know why, you can go over to episode 43 of this podcast, 40 episodes ago. That's wild. And I talk all about supplements in that one. And so whether you know what supplements that you need, you want to take, or maybe if you're just wanting to get started taking some things to support your metabolic health, head over to that episode 43 actually and listen. I talk about the core 4 supplements that I recommend for metabolic health. And that's just like an easy way that you can support the show, support what I'm doing over here at Lifestyle School so I can continue to create and not be stressed about money. So with that, let's get into one of my favorite books, The 7 Habits. So this is one question I hear almost every single week from clients. And it's something along the lines of, why do I know what to do, but like can't get myself to do it? Maybe you've asked yourself this same question. Vegetables are healthier than chips, right? We all know that. You know that you should probably go for a walk at some point of the day or maybe after dinner. Getting to bed earlier is going to help your energy. You know that strength training is important, especially as you age. Sugar doesn't make you feel well. It makes you actually feel bad. Fasting is going to help regulate your hunger because you've done it in the past. All of these things. So why is it so hard to actually live them? For years, I thought the answer was that people simply needed more information. If they just maybe understand insulin resistance a little bit better, if I could teach them fasting more clearly, or, if maybe they just had another meal plan to follow, then people would finally change and start doing these things that are going to have a huge impact, a positive impact on their health. And the truth is that after coaching hundreds of people over the years, I've been doing this more than 10 years, I've realized something, that most of the time, information isn't the problem. Granted, information is great, and it's good to get good information because there's a lot of misinformation out there regarding nutrition, but the fact is I think that we are one of the most informed generations in history because, we have like supercomputers in our pockets. Our phone right now, if you just open it up, you can find thousands of workout plans, healthy recipes, enough nutrition advice to literally read for the next 10 years. The problem isn't the lack of information, it's the lack of transformation that happens secondary to that knowledge. We don't struggle because we don't know enough. We struggle because becoming a different person is actually really hard. Changing habits is hard. Changing the way you think is hard. Changing your identity is actually quite hard. And yet, those are the very things that produce lasting change. And that's why I called my course Lifestyle School. And like everything within this umbrella is called Lifestyle School. My course is Lifestyle School for Weight Loss. My community is Lifestyle School Daily. Not fasting school, not keto school, not weight loss school, but lifestyle school. Because diets come and go, supplements come and go, health trends, as you I'm sure know at this point, come and they go. But the person you become, that is what determines where you'll be 5 years from now. One of the things Covey talks about early in his book is something called the character ethic. He says that for much of history, success was believed to come from developing your character. Things like honesty, integrity, humility, discipline, patience, responsibility. But over time, I think our culture has shifted towards what he calls the personality ethic. Instead of asking, who am I becoming? We started asking, what's the quickest way to get results? Ooh, that hits, right? How can I look successful? How can I appear disciplined? How can I get there faster? And honestly, I don't think we've ever seen this more clearly than in the weight loss industry. Every week there's another miracle. There's another supplement, injection, cleanse, detox, magic food, biohack, influencer promising that they finally discovered the secret. And listen, I'm not against tools, and all of the things I just listed could potentially be a tool. You've heard me talk about, fasting. We've talked about a modified keto diet. We talk about CGMs. We talk about supplements. We've even spent multiple episodes talking about GLP-1 medications and peptides. Tools can absolutely have their place, but here's what I want you to hear. This is really important. A tool can help you. It cannot become you. You can't take the medication, or I should say you can take the medication. You can still have, but you still have to choose your meals, right? Even though you're taking medication, you can wear the glucose monitor. You still have to respond to the information it gives you. You can follow the perfect meal plan, but you still have to prepare the meals. You can listen to every podcast under the sun. Hopefully you're listening to all my podcasts, but you still have to decide what you'll do tomorrow morning when that alarm goes off. The greatest transformation isn't learning another strategy. It's becoming the kind of person who consistently lives those strategies. And that is why this book, I think, resonated with me so deeply, because I realized Stephen Covey wasn't writing about business. He was writing about stewardship, and stewardship of your relationships, your time, your work, your choices. They all, are so important. And I can't help but think those same principles apply to our bodies, because whether you realize it or not, every single day you're stewarding your metabolism, you're stewarding your hormones, your energy, your mind, your future. Every meal you eat, every walk you take, every night of sleep you experience, every workout, fast, stressful day, every choice is either moving you towards better metabolic health or away from it. Not because one decision changes everything, but because thousands of small decisions eventually become your life. One of my favorite quotes is this: we first make our habits, and then our habits make us. Think about that for a second. The things that you do automatically today at one point required intentional effort. Things like brushing your teeth, driving your car, making your morning cup of coffee, checking your phone. Those weren't always automatic, but you repeated them enough times that eventually your brain said, I've got this. And that's wonderful, right? When that habit is healthy. It's absolutely devastating, though, when that habit is not healthy, because if your automatic response to stress is eating, your brain will continue offering food every time life gets hard. And life gets hard a lot. I'm only 36 and I can say that. If your automatic response to boredom is snacking, that pathway, gets stronger. And if your automatic response to exhaustion is eating more sugar, that becomes your default. And there is good news here. The opposite is also true. You can build new defaults. You can train your brain to respond differently. And that is why I created Lifestyle School. And that's really what Lifestyle School is really about. It's not about teaching you to white knuckle your way through life. It's teaching you to build habits that eventually become who you are. And when that happens, health stops feeling like a bunch of work. And that is a beautiful thing. It simply becomes your lifestyle. And that's exactly where Covey begins, not with tactics, not with productivity, not with goals, but with responsibility. So let's get into habit number 1. There's 7 habits, guys, and we're going to go through them and we're going to connect them back to metabolic health. So habit 1 is be proactive. Covey says that the first habit of highly effective people is that they are proactive. Now, when I first heard that word, I thought simply meant being like taking initiative, getting things done, being productive, but he means something much, much deeper. He says proactive people recognize that while they can't control everything that happens to them, they can always choose how they respond, which is such a powerful principle, especially when it comes to our health, because every single one of us has circumstances in our life that we didn't choose. Some people are genetically predispositioned to insulin resistance. That's me. Some people grow up in homes where processed food was normal. Some people are navigating menopause. Some are postpartum. Some are caring for aging parents. Some are working multiple jobs. Some are struggling with chronic pain. I also fall under that one. And some people are grieving. And some are just so exhausted because they haven't slept through the night in years, for whether that's because you're a parent or maybe you have just really struggled with your sleep. Life isn't equally easy for everyone, and I never want to minimize that. But here's what I do want to challenge. Sometimes we spend so much energy thinking about everything we can't control that we stop seeing everything that we can. Covey talks about something called the circle of concern and the circle of influence. Your circle of concern includes everything you're worried about. So think of things like politics, the economy, genetics, your hormones, your schedule, your age, the food industry, social media, things that matter, but many of which you have very little direct control over. And then there's your circle of influence. And here's where your choices live. This is where today's breakfast is, your bedtime, that walk after dinner, where meal planning, drinking enough water, all of these things live in this space, right? And that is where your influence is. And one of the biggest turning points in my own health journey happened when I stopped asking, why is my body like this? And started asking, given the body that I have, what's the wisest thing that I can do today? The one question changed everything. I can't change the fact that I am predisposed to be insulin resistant. I can't change the fact that I look at carbs and I gain weight. But I could learn how insulin worked. I couldn't magically make my hunger disappear, but I could discover that fasting actually improved my hunger hormones over time. And I couldn't erase years of unhealthy habits overnight, unfortunately. I really wish I could. But I could start replacing one habit at a time. And that is the heart of being proactive. It isn't pretending life is easy. It's refusing to surrender your choices because life is hard. And before we move to habit number 2, I want to leave you with one thought about being proactive. One of the things I tell my clients all the time is that responsibility is not the same thing as blame. Unfortunately, I think those two words get confused. When I encourage someone to take ownership of their health, I'm not saying everything that happened has or is your fault. That's not what I'm saying. Maybe you grew up in a home where there wasn't much emphasis on nutrition. Maybe no one taught you how to cook food. Maybe emotional eating became your way of coping with difficult circumstances and you really had no other option or tools. Maybe you've been battling something like insulin resistance for years without even knowing it. Or maybe you've spent decades being told to eat less and exercise more, and every time you did that, you just became hungrier, more exhausted, and eventually regained all the weight. Those experiences are so real, but here is the encouraging part. Even if they aren't your fault, they don't have to define your future. Your past explains you, it doesn't define you. I'm going to say that again. Your past explains you, it doesn't define you. And I think one of the greatest gifts God has given us is the ability to choose. Not every circumstance or diagnosis or challenge, but today's choices. And today's choices become tomorrow's habits. As I said earlier, tomorrow's habits become next year's lifestyle, and next year's lifestyle becomes the person you ultimately become. And that's why I love this phrase. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Maybe you've spent 20 years building habits that aren't serving your health. That doesn't mean the story is over. Today is another opportunity to plant something different. Maybe today looks like eating a little bit more protein. Maybe it looks like skipping that afternoon soda that you've been having for years. Maybe it looks like walking around the block instead of scrolling on your social media. Maybe it looks like getting to bed before 10 o'clock at night. Those don't seem like life-changing decisions, but eventually, or I should say, but individually, these decisions, they don't seem life-changing, but because they're actually probably not. But when you repeat these small decisions hundreds and thousands of times, they truly become transformational. And that's what being proactive looks like. It's making today's decisions with tomorrow's person in mind. I love, there's different times in life where I have done things ahead of time. I've really thought ahead, I've planned ahead. And then I'm in this moment that I knew was going to be stressful that I planned for. And I was like, wow, thank you to last week Hope, who thought and was so caring for today's Hope, right? So getting into this second habit, it says, Stephen Covey's second habit is begin with the end in mind. You've probably heard this one before. I feel like people talk about this one a lot. Most people think about this as setting goals, and goals certainly matter. We kind of talked about this last week. Having something you're working towards is very important, but actually, I think that this habit goes much deeper than just writing a number on a piece of paper. When most people start a weight loss journey, their end goal sounds something like this. I want to lose 40 pounds. I want to fit into my wedding dress. I want to lower my A1C. I want my blood pressure medication to be reduced, or I want to get off of it. And these are absolutely wonderful goals. In fact, many of my clients start with those exact kind of goals. But here is something that I have noticed. When people are only motivated by the outcome, their motivation usually disappears somewhere in the middle. Because losing weight isn't exciting every single day. If you've done it, you know. Some weeks the scale doesn't move. Sometimes it even goes backwards. Like for me today, stepping on the scale, I was like, yep, that happened. Sometimes you do everything right and your body still hangs on to water because you're stressed or you didn't sleep well, or maybe you're approaching your menstrual cycle. If your motivation is entirely dependent on seeing immediate progress, eventually you're going to become discouraged. And that is why I think Covey's principle is so powerful. Instead of asking, what do I want? You ask, who do I want to become? That question truly changes everything, because the goal isn't simply to lose 30 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds. The goal is to become the type of person who naturally weighs 30 pounds less because of how they live, right? Think about that for a minute. Healthy people don't wake up every morning asking, should I make a healthy breakfast today? They simply eat breakfast in a way that is consistent with who they are. People who prioritize movement don't negotiate in their head every workout. It's not this internal battle. Movement is simply part of their identity and what they do and who they are. People who value sleep don't think about going to bed early as a punishment, right? Like a little kid. They see it as an investment in their health. They're excited to do it. That's how I feel about going to bed early. Healthy habits stop feeling like chores when they become expressions of your identity. One of my favorite questions to ask clients is this: what would the healthiest version of you do right now? What would the healthiest version of you do right now? Not 10 years from now, not after you've lost the weight, but today. Imagine the healthiest version of yourself walking into your kitchen. What would she put on her plate? Imagine her going to the grocery store. What would be in her cart? Imagine her having a stressful day at work. How would she respond? Imagine her waking up after a poor night's sleep. Would she quit because she was tired, or would she simply adjust her expectations and keep moving forward? When you begin thinking this way, something interesting starts to happen. You stop waiting to become healthy before acting healthy. Instead, you begin acting like the healthy person you're becoming, and eventually those actions become reality. And that is a really beautiful thing. I want you to imagine yourself 5 years from now. Just take a moment, close your eyes, imagine, picture yourself 5 years from now. Where are you? Picture that version of yourself. How do you feel when you wake up? How is your energy? What kind of relationship do you have with food? Are you constantly thinking about your next meal? Or has food become something you enjoy without consuming every thought you have all throughout the day? Can you hike with your family? Are you getting onto the floor to play with your grandchildren? Are you traveling without worrying about whether you're physically able to keep up? What do your lab results look like? What does your blood sugar look like? What does your inflammation look like? How do your joints feel? How do your clothes fit? More importantly, who have you become? Because here is something I think we often forget. 5 years is going to pass whether you intentionally change or not. The only question is, who will you be when you get there? One of the things I love about fasting is that it teaches us delayed gratification. We talked about this last week. When you're fasting, you're practicing saying, I don't have to satisfy every desire immediately. The principle applies far beyond food. Successful people in almost every area of life have learned to delay short-term comfort in exchange for long-term reward. This is true financially, it's true spiritually, it's true relationally, and it's certainly true with our health. Every healthy choice you make today is really a gift you're giving to your future self. And the walk you didn't feel like taking today, that's for your future self. That strength training workout you squeezed into your busy schedule, that was for your future self. Choosing protein instead of processed snacks, going to bed 30 minutes earlier. Your future self will either inherit the decisions you're making, the decisions you're making today, or she'll inherit the consequences of avoiding them. And that is really big. Excuse me. I also think we need to, kind of broaden our definition of a success. Let me grab a sip of my water here. My morning electrolytes, so good. So let's broaden our definition of success, because sometimes we become so focused on the number on the scale that we lose sight of why we want to lose weight in the first place. Most people don't actually want to lose weight. They want what they believe losing weight will give them, right? Things like energy, confidence, freedom, health, longevity, the ability to play with their kids, for their clothes to fit really well, to travel, to serve others, to feel really confident and comfortable in their body. And this scale is truly simply one measurement. It's not the mission. As a Christian, I think this becomes even more meaningful, because I believe our bodies are our gifts from God, and that they're the vehicles through which we can love people. So, I can serve my children, I can raise my children, I can build relationships. And I think taking care of our health isn't about becoming obsessed with our appearance. It's about becoming stewards of what we've been entrusted with. The healthier I become, the more energy I have to show up and serve my family and love them. The healthier I become, the more present I can be with my kids. The more I potentially, have to invest in other people that I love and care about. It's so much bigger. This is such so much bigger of a vision than simply fitting into smaller jeans. And honestly, I think it's, much stronger source of motivation, because there will come a day when every one of us has wrinkles. I hope. Aging is a gift. Our metabolism is going to slow as we age. Our bodies are going to change. If our motivation is rooted entirely in appearance, we're constantly, going to probably feel like we're losing a little bit. But if our motivation is rooted in stewardship, then every healthy decision still matters, regardless of our age, regardless of the number on the scale, or whether anyone notices. And that is beginning with the end in mind, not just picturing a smaller body, but picturing a life that's healthier, that's richer, and more aligned with the person God created you to become. And once you know who you're becoming, the next question naturally becomes, well, how do you actually organize your life to support that vision, right? And that's exactly what Stephen Covey's third habit is all about. Put first things first is what that third habit is. And I think this may be the habit that has the greatest impact on your metabolic health. So, if I had to choose one habit from Stephen Covey's book that I think has the greatest impact on someone's health, it'd probably be this one. Put first things first. Now, I guess you can probably come to some assumptions as to why. Here's why, though. Most people don't fail because they don't know what to do. They fail because they haven't built their life in a way that supports doing it. There is a vastly big difference. We often think our biggest obstacles is motivation. I just need to be more motivated. I'll start on Monday. I need to just get through this busy season. But after coaching people for over a decade, I have become convinced that motivation is one of the least reliable things that you can build your health on. I know this from my own personal journey, as well as working with many, many people over the years. Motivation comes and goes. Some mornings you wake up and you feel like, great, you got a ton of energy. Other mornings you wake up and you don't. And some weeks the scale is moving and other weeks it's not. And some days life is calm. Other days your kids are sick, work is overwhelming, you didn't sleep well. And the last thing you want to do is cook dinner or go for a walk or work out or any of it, right? You just want to veg. And if your health depends on feeling motivated, well, eventually life is going to win. And that is why systems matter so much. And you've probably heard the quote, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the levels of your systems. And I believe this is totally 100% true. Let's take grocery shopping as an example. Imagine two people. The first person walks into the grocery store hungry with no plan. They're wandering the aisles. Things look good. A few snacks end up in the cart, some frozen meals, maybe some cookies, nothing terrible, just a bunch of decisions made in the moment. That second person walks in with a list. The meals have already been planned. Protein has been prioritized. The vegetables are on the list. The healthy fats are on the list. They're not relying on willpower, their memory. They're relying on preparation. Which person, let me ask you, is more likely to make healthy choices throughout the week? I would say probably the second one. Not because they're more disciplined, but because they removed unnecessary decisions. And that's one of the things healthy people do well. They reduce the friction in their life. Think about your own life. Do you have workout clothes laid out the night before? Do you know what you're going to eat tomorrow? Have a rough idea? Have you scheduled your workouts? Do you have protein available when you're busy? Have you planned your fasting days ahead of time? Did you protect your bedtime? Or are you making all these decisions in the middle of a stressful day? Every decision you postpone becomes another opportunity to choose convenience over intention. And healthy living becomes much easier when you make important decisions before emotions enter the chat. And one thing I've noticed over the years is that many people are interested in becoming healthier. Far fewer are committed. Now, before that sounds a little harsh, let me explain what I mean. When you're interested in something, you do it when it's convenient. When you're committed to something, though, you do it even when it's inconvenient. Those are two very different things. Think about something like brushing your teeth. Most of us don't wake up every morning and ask, do I feel motivated to brush my teeth today? At least I hope you don't. No, we don't. We just do it. Why? Because it's become a non-negotiable. It's simply part of our day. Imagine if preparing healthy meals, going for walks, lifting weights, protecting our sleep, eventually became that automatic. That is really the goal, not constantly relying on our motivation, but building routines that become normal. And this is why I have created Lifestyle School Daily, which I haven't talked about much. It's a new program. I've been, reading this book, and, I've read this book multiple times over the last couple of years, and I keep coming back to one question. How do we actually help people practice these healthy habits consistently? Because let's be honest, listening to a podcast is wonderful, and I hope you listen. Reading books is great. Learning is so important. I do think it's helpful, but information alone rarely changes our lives. Application is what truly is the catalyst for change. And that's one of the biggest reasons I've been working on something that I'm so excited to start sharing with you guys, that this September, it's open right now for Lifestyle School for Weight Loss students. But this September, I am going to open to the public my Lifestyle School Daily community. And this community was born out of this exact idea. I don't want to create another place where people simply consume more information. There's already more health information available than any of us could ever read. Instead, I wanted to create a community where we focus on doing, on taking action, where we're celebrating showing up instead of showing off, right? We are encouraging each other in our consistency. We're not striving to be perfect. Where we remember that transformation happens through ordinary daily choices, the boring, right? Every month, there's going to be a different challenge, a different focus. We're going to celebrate small wins. We're going to check in with one another. We're going to encourage one another. We'll remind each other why we started in the first place. Because here's something that I've learned. Consistency is Consistency is contagious. When you're surrounded by people who are making healthy decisions, those decisions begin to feel normal. And when you're surrounded by people who prioritize sleep, you want to also begin prioritizing sleep. It feels much easier, right? There's less friction. When you're surrounded by people who celebrate walking instead of, punishing themselves with impossible expectations, this can become your mindset too. And community doesn't remove the work, but it certainly makes work feel lighter. And I think that health journeys work so much this way as well. And Lifestyle School Daily isn't about creating pressure. It's about creating support. And that's really my heart for this community. It's about creating an environment where healthy habits become part of everyday life. Because when you put the first things first, as Stephen Covey says, everything else starts to fall into place. Now, Stephen Covey tells a famous story about a professor standing in front of his class with a large glass jar. He fills the jar with big rocks and he asks, "Is the jar full?" And the class says, "Yes." And then he pours in smaller rocks and they fill the gaps. And he says, "Now is it full?" And again, they say yes. And then he pours in sand. The sand fills every remaining space, then water. The point is simple. If you put the sand in first, the rocks don't fit. Our lives work the same way. If every day is filled with social media, television, endless emails, running from one obligation to another, there won't be room for the things that matter most. Your health is one of those big rocks. Sleep is a big rock. Relationships are a big rock. Movement, big rock. Planning your meals is a big rock. If you don't intentionally put those into your schedules first, the sand of life will consume all of your time. That is why I encourage my clients to literally schedule their health. Put your workouts in your calendar, schedule your walks, plan when you're going to go grocery shopping, choose your fasting days ahead of time. Don't leave the most important principles or priorities, up to chance. This is also, I think this is a Benjamin Franklin quote, "If you fail to plan, you plan to fail." And so they have to be in there. And I want to leave you with one question before we move to habit number 4. If someone followed you around for the next 2 weeks, not listening to what you said, only watching how you spent your time, would they conclude that your health is one of your highest priorities? I want you to think about that. That's not a question to create guilt. It's a question to create awareness, because awareness is where change begins. Maybe today is the day you stop hoping your health fits into your life, and instead you begin intentionally building your life around the health you want to live. Because the truth is, we always make time for what we've decided matters most. And when your health becomes one of those things, everything begins to change. So moving in to part 4, the 4th habit, I want to just take a moment and talk about real quickly where we have been. So far we've talked about ownership of the things we can't control. We've talked about becoming the person that we want to be instead of simply chasing a number on the scale. And we've talked about putting first things first by creating systems that make healthy living more automatic. Now, someone's calling me. Hold on. Now we're going to shift our focus outward, because here's something I think is easy to forget. Living a healthy lifestyle shouldn't make your life smaller. It should make your life bigger. And if you go for more freedom, or it should make your life bigger. It should give you more freedom. Sorry, I'm trying to rearrange my thoughts. I got distracted by that phone call. You're going to have things like more energy, more confidence, more opportunities to serve the people around you. And that is exactly where habit number 4 takes us. And habit number 4 is this: think win-win. When most people hear the phrase win-win, they usually think about like a business negotiation, right? Everybody leaves happy, no one loses. But I think the principle has really interesting application to health. One of the reasons so many diets fail is because they feel like someone has to lose. And you lose the food you love, you lose your social life, your flexibility, your weekends, your favorite family traditions, and eventually your brain starts believing that healthy living is just one long series of sacrifices. And if that's how we think about our health, we're only going to, stick it out until our willpower runs out, and we all know that's not going to be very long. I don't want my clients to feel like they're constantly losing. I want them to experience freedom. And that's one of the reasons I teach what I call a feasting and fasting lifestyle instead of constant restriction. There are seasons to fast, there's seasons and days to feast. There are birthday parties, there's vacations, holidays, family dinners, celebrations. Those moments aren't failures. And I think sometimes we think of them as that, which is crazy to me. They are a part of life, and the goal isn't to eliminate those experiences. The goal is to learn how to enjoy them without allowing them to derail everything else on your health journey. I think that's one of the greatest misconceptions about healthy living. People assume that once you become healthy, you never eat dessert. No way. Like, you never celebrate, you never enjoy pizza again or go out to dinner. That hasn't been my experience at all. What changes isn't necessarily what you eat every single day. It's your relationship with food. Food stops becoming your source of comfort. It stops becoming entertainment, that reward for surviving the day. Instead, it becomes your nourishment, something you enjoy without feeling controlled by it. And that is truly freedom. And I want you to think that that's a win for everyone involved, right? Your body wins because it's getting the nutrients it needs. Your family wins because you're present at the dinner table instead of obsessing over the calories. Your relationships win because you're no longer avoiding social gatherings because of potential food things. Your future wins because you've reduced your risk of chronic disease. That's truly a win-win. And one thing I've learned after years of coaching is that your health should support your purpose, not compete with it. If your entire day revolves around thinking about food, tracking food, feeling guilty about food, recovering from overeating, starting over every Monday, your health journey has become another source of stress in your life. And that is not freedom, my friend. One of the reasons I love improving metabolic health first is because so many people discover that the constant food noise begins to quiet down. Their hunger becomes more manageable, their energy becomes more stable, their cravings become less intense, and suddenly they have mental space to think about things other than food. How glorious, right? Imagine how much of life opens up when food is no longer occupying every corner of your mind. And that is what we're really after. not simply weight loss, but freedom. And I think this might be the habit number 5, switching gears here, might be the habit that surprised me the most as I was thinking about putting this podcast together and reading the book. It says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Covey talks about the importance of listening before speaking, understanding before trying to fix. And immediately I started thinking about how often we do the exact opposite with our own bodies. We don't stop to understand them. We immediately try to control them. We notice we're gaining weight, slash calories. We're tired, we drink coffee. We're stressed, we eat. We're hungry, we assume something is wrong with us. Instead of asking, why? Why? That is one of my favorite questions. Let's just ask why. Let's get curious. Why do I crave sugar every afternoon? Why do I always snack after dinner? Why do I struggle so much on the weekends? Why do I lose control when I'm stressed? Why do I eat when I'm not actually hungry? These questions really matter because behavior always has a reason. Maybe you're actually exhausted, or your blood sugar has been on a roller coaster all day long. Maybe you skipped protein at your last meal, or maybe you only slept 5 hours last night. Oh, I just spit on the microphone. Sorry. We keep fighting symptoms instead of solving problems. And if we don't understand what's driving our behavior, we're just going to be stuck in this cycle, right? One of the biggest shifts I try to help my clients make is replacing shame with curiosity. We talked about this regarding my raccoon incident at the beginning of the episode. Shame says, I have no self-control. Curiosity, on the other hand, asks, what happened today that made this so difficult? Like, what is happening? Shame says, you always fail. You always do this. You just, this is who you are. Curiosity asks, what can I learn from this? Shame says, I blew my diet. May as well just slash the rest of the tires on the car. I'll start on Monday. Curiosity asks, what circumstance led to this choice? Do you hear the difference there? One shuts down learning. The other creates it. And let's say you overeat one evening. Instead of immediately saying, I have no discipline, I always do this. What if you asked a few questions of how much sleep did I get yesterday? Did I eat enough protein today? Did I drink any water? Am I stressed? Did I skip lunch? Was I overwhelmed? Suddenly, you've got information, and information leads to better decisions. Oop, hit my microphone. Sorry, guys. This is exactly why I encourage clients to journal. Sometimes that includes tracking your meals, your sleep, your stress. I'm not talking about counting calories. That's totally different things. Not because I want you to obsess over data, though, but because patterns tell stories. And once you understand the story that these patterns are telling you, you can begin changing the ending. And how beautiful is that? And this is also true physiologically. Your body isn't trying to sabotage you. I say this to my clients all the time. Your body wants to heal. It wants to be at a healthy weight. It's responding, though, to the environment you've created. If insulin is elevated all day, your body is responding accordingly. And if you're sleeping, 4 to 6 hours a night, your hunger hormones are responding accordingly. And if you're chronically stressed, cortisol is responding how it should. Your metabolism isn't your enemy. It's incredibly intelligent. It's constantly adapting in an effort to keep you alive. When we understand that, we stop fighting with our body. We stop being at war with ourselves, and we begin working with it. And that's exactly what metabolic health is all about. Not forcing your body into submission. It's about creating an internal environment where it can function the way it was designed to. Now, habit number 6 is called synergize. This Covey's 6th habit is all about synergy. In other words, the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. I can't think of a better description of metabolic health, if I'm being honest with you. Sometimes people ask me, what's the one thing I should focus on? And honestly, there usually isn't just one thing. Health is a beautifully interconnected system. Let's say you begin sleeping an extra hour every night. what happens? Your hunger hormones improve. You have more energy. You're more likely to exercise, crave less sugar. Stress levels are going to go down. Blood sugar is going to improve. And now imagine you also then begin strength training. Well, your insulin sensitivity is going to improve. You're going to build muscle. Your metabolism is going to become more resilient. And now you add in a daily walk and your digestion improves. Your blood sugar improves even more. Your stress decreases. And then you start prioritizing protein and fiber and your satiety improves. Your cravings decrease. Inflammation begins to come down. Do you see what's happening? Every healthy habit supports the next one. They build on each other. It's like an orchestra. A violin sounds beautiful. So does a cello. So does a piano. But when they're all playing together, something incredible happens. And that is your metabolic health. Nutrition, sleep, movement, stress management, relationships, faith, purpose, hydration. They're all instruments playing together. And when one area improves, the others often become easier. And that's why lifestyle school has never been just about, learning to fast. It's about, it's not just about nutrition and like doing a nutrition course. It is truly about a lifestyle because your body doesn't separate your sleep from your nutrition or your stress from your hormones. Everything in your body is beautifully interconnected. And that's how we have to start approaching our health. The final habit is one I hope we never outgrow, and that is sharpen the saw. Habit number 7 is he says, sharpen the saw. Covey says effective people continually renew themselves in 4 areas: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And I absolutely love that because healthy people don't arrive. They continue growing, they continue learning, they continue investing in themselves. I think about someone who cuts down trees for a living. If they never stopped to sharpen the saw, well, eventually they're going to have to work twice as hard for half the result, right? The same thing happens with us. We become so busy doing that we forget to recover. We forget to rest, to read, to pray, to spend time with the people we love, to simply be still. And I think one of the healthiest things you can do isn't sometimes another workout. It might be resting and going to bed, reading a book, taking a walk outside, spending time reading scripture, calling a friend. Health isn't just about burning calories. It's about renewing the whole person. And that is recovery. And recovery is truly, I think, where we sharpen the saw. So as we finish the 7 habits, of highly effective people, I kept coming back to one simple thought as I was putting this together. Success isn't built through dramatic moments. And I know I've said this before. It's built through ordinary days. It's built by what you repeatedly choose when no one else is watching. It isn't and that is exactly how metabolic health is built. It's built one meal at a time, one walk at a time, one workout at a time, one good night of sleep at a time. And over time, these little choices, they become habits. Those habits become your lifestyle. And eventually, the lifestyle becomes your identity. And I don't know where you are today. Maybe you're just getting started. Maybe you've been struggling for years to figure this out. Maybe you've lost weight before only to regain it back. Maybe you're discouraged because the scale hasn't moved in weeks. I want to encourage you with this. You don't have to become a completely different person overnight. You simply need to become 1% better every day. Choose one habit, not all 7, just one. Maybe it's like becoming more proactive. Maybe it's planning your week out, protecting your sleep. Maybe it's just becoming curious with yourself instead of critical. Whatever it is, start there. Master one habit, then build the next, and that is how real transformation happens. And if you'd like a community of people to practice those habits together with, I'd love to invite you to join us this September in Lifestyle School Daily Community. We're going to have a 30-day challenge every month with like a different bonus focus, whether it's like identity or movement or sleep. And I'm going to do a little extra education on those for that month, and we're going to focus on them. And then For the challenge, there's 10 daily habits that we're trying to do. Things like make our bed, no snacking, lead our meals with protein and fiber, things of that nature, go for a walk. And it's not about, completing a checklist every day. It's about just being someone who shows up to try to really start to make these habits, like we talked about brushing your teeth. We want it to be a part of your identity. And that just happens when you repeat things over and over and over again. And with this community, I don't believe that just joining a community is magically going to change your life. But I do believe consistent encouragement, accountability, daily practice does make it so much easier to become the person you want to be. And that's why I have created, and I'm working on creating this community. So with that, guys, I think that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. I hope you feel like this time was well spent. If today's episode encouraged you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, family member, or someone who needs this reminder. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave a comment, a review so that you never miss a future episode. And remember, your metabolism isn't broken. Your body is incredibly resilient. Small choices matter. Healthy habits compound. And the person you're becoming is built one faithful day at a time. With that, you guys, we'll see you next week.